Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live streaming. Just type in your name, where you're joining us from, so that we know who is with us. And if you have any questions, you just type them in so that they can be addressed at a later stage. Thank you for joining us. Share the video with somebody, tag somebody. Yes, I will just start by introducing our presenter. Themba is a chartered accountant with more than 24 years of experience in corporate financial management and risk management. He also holds a master's in business administration, MBA, and has been a consultant and trainer in the areas of risk management, asset and liability management, investments management for several corporates in 13 African countries. In addition to this experience, Themba is an experienced entrepreneur who has founded a number of organizations. Over a period of 15 years, Themba has done presentations on personal financial management to several white-collar and blue-collar conference audiences. Most recently, for today's presentation, Themba is an author of the upcoming book, Manage Your Personal Finances Like a Black Belt. In that book, he expresses his firm belief that it is possible for anyone with an income to financially retire in 5 years. He believes that to attain black belt status in personal financial management, one has to have 3 things: hard financial skills, the right mindset or a developed level of consciousness, and developed habits. So join us as we hear from Themba this afternoon. If you have any questions, just post them in the comment section and we'll address them. Over to you, Themba.
Great. Thank you very much, Tafadzwa. I'm just waiting for everyone to join in, and then I will kickstart the presentation. So let's give everyone probably just a minute. My name is Themba Mazibuko. As Tafadzwa has introduced me, we're going to do a 40-minute presentation on yellow belt personal financial management skill. And there are 2 topics that I would want to focus on today. The first topic being, how can you be debt-free? And the second topic is, how can you build reserves as you go on your personal financial management journey? I think I did mention it the last time. I wrote a book which is basically called Manage Your Personal Finances Like a Black Belt. Oh, sorry guys, there is feedback which is coming in here, which I just need to sort out. If you can give me just a minute to sort out that feedback. All right. I've written a book called Manage Your Personal Finances Like a Black Belt. And this book is really based on my previous experience as a caretaker. In that book, I basically have got 3 key messages. The first key message is that it doesn't matter how much income you earn, you can retire in 5 years. That's my belief. But the second key message that I make is that becoming a black belt is a journey. So in the book, we present a competence framework, just as they do in the caretaker world. So if you are a beginner, you are a white belt. If you get to black belt, it means that you have mastered certain financial management skills. So that's the second message that we mention in this book. The third key message that we mention in this book is that for you to develop that competence, you really need to develop in 3 broad areas. The first broad area is you need to develop hard financial skills. The second broad area is that you need a mindset. You need to develop emotionally. The third broad area is you need to develop certain habits. So today we're going to focus on the yellow belt, because this is the second presentation. In the next presentation, we're going to focus on, the orange belt, then the green belt, then the blue belt, then the brown belt, and then the black belt. So what are some of the skills that I needed at yellow belt level? My belief is that you need 2 skills. You need to be able to budget effectively. You also need to manage your balance sheet. Your balance sheet is basically your listing of all your assets and your liabilities. Your budget is where you document all the money that you receive and all the money that you spend on a monthly basis. So at yellow belt level, we desire to just develop people's skills to budget and also to have people get in control of their finances. So those are the hard skills that we would want to develop at that level. In terms of a mindset, one thing that I have seen in life is that there are people who've got a victim mentality. These are people who've got excuses. If you ask them, why are they not doing well financially? They will tell you it's because I was born in the wrong family, or this other thing happened to me. One thing that I can tell you about extreme events in life is that every 5 years, every 10 years, you're going to have a life-changing event that is going to affect your finances. That life-changing event could be a retrenchment. It could be whatever it is. If you've got a victim mentality, you're going to be forever blaming circumstances and blaming people for your financial circumstances. So before you can develop to green belt, to orange level, we would want you to give up blame so that you take responsibility over your life. It's a mindset that you need to develop. At yellow belt level, in terms of habits, there are 2 particular habits that we would want to work on. Number 1, we would want you to develop generosity. Some people will say to me, Themba, I don't have enough, therefore I can't be generous. what I see is that people that are able to be generous will always have money coming back to them. The second habit is the habit of saving on a monthly basis. So let's go in detail in those three broad areas. Let's start with the budget. Why budgeting? Let me just tell you one of the things that I hear most of the time. I talk to people who don't earn a lot of money, and they tell me, Themba, I can't budget because I don't earn a lot of money. Maybe budgeting is for people who earn quite a lot of money. That's the opposite of what we teach. What we teach is that people who don't earn a lot of money should actually be using budgets. Budgets are important for three things. Number one, they are a tool of allocating scarce financial resources. What I mean by that is that I can always look at your budget and see where your priorities are. Because a budget is really a priority statement. It shows how you allocate scarce financial resources. So you can't operate without a budget. A budget is a tool for managing costs. A budget is a tool for managing performance. So at Yellow Belt level, we want people to really get into the habit of doing a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are not for accountants. They are for everyone, so that you are able to get in control of your finances. Secondly, we would want you to develop balanced management skills. I come across a lot of people, if I ask them, how much are you worth financially? They can't tell me a number. If you were to ask Patrice Motsepe today how much he's worth, he knows a number. So at Yellow Belt level, we want you to get comfortable with net worth, because net worth is how you manage your financial progress. So what will probably happen at Yellow Belt level is that you've got more debt probably than the assets that you have. That's not a problem. We're going to work around that. So those are the financial management skills. I just wanted you to appreciate the importance of a budget. In terms of mindset, mindset is not something that you just leave to chance. It's something that you have to work on a daily basis. The kind of mindset that we would want you to have is stop blaming people for your circumstances. Stop making excuses. As we go to black belt level, we don't accept any excuses at all. You need to give up a poverty mentality. One thing that I can assure you today is that there is plenty of money around. Because of the fact that we've been born in poverty, sometimes we've heard statements like money does not grow on trees. And we are really convinced that there is scarcity. The way the world works is that it's an abundant world. And unless you convince yourself that we live in an abundant world, you're never going to make financial progress in your life. And that's something that I would want to make clear as we go on our journey of financial management. You have to believe in abundance. You cannot believe that there is a disaster waiting for you to happen, out there. Also, in terms of mindset, we need to get you into the habit of avoiding consumption debt. So debt is positive and it's negative. As we develop to black belt status, one of the things that I will tell you is that you will never graduate to black belt unless you can use debt instruments responsibly. So I always ask the questions, is debt good? The answer is yes and no. Debt is bad if you're using debt for consumption. Debt is good if you're using debt for productive purposes. So let me give you an example. It's not acceptable to use your credit card for groceries, for example. I don't encourage people to open clothing accounts because that is consumption debt. If you were to borrow money to buy a house, that's good debt, because in all likelihood, your house is going to go up in value. If you were to borrow to start a business, that's also growth, because your business will generate money in the long term. So debt is good, it's also bad. When we are at yellow belt level, our objective is for us to get rid of unproductive debt. One of the things that I don't encourage people to do is to borrow from friends, from parents, or from other individuals. As you graduate to green belt level, you need to get into the habit of borrowing from banks, because banks are in the business of giving people money. I always say to people when they want to borrow money from them, I sometimes, particularly those people who get into the habit of borrowing money from, sometimes I have to be very frank with them and tell them, look, I'm not a bank. Go and borrow from a bank. Because as you go to black belt level, you must develop your credit score to such an extent that banks will be willing to give you money. So I do not encourage people to borrow from friends, from relatives, because sometimes we destroy relationships through debts that have not been paid. At yellow belt level, we would want you to think about, freedom from debt. When I talk about debt freedom, I'm essentially talking about getting rid of consumption debt. I'm talking about paying all the debts that you owe to people. And if you were to owe debts to banks, I would have no problems with that, because banks are in the business of giving people money, anyway. For some of you who are Christians, you would know that the Apostle Paul taught people and said to them, owe no one anything. In other words, get rid of your debt. That's my mentality. I don't want to owe anybody any money. The only probably acceptable debt that I would want to have is productive debt, and debt that I owe probably to banks. In terms of mindset, we would also want you to understand that you need to operate with reserves. For some of you who do economics, you will know that countries that are doing well, that are rich countries, they always have reserves. Companies operate with reserves. And I believe that as individuals in our personal management journey, we must also operate with the reserves, right? So if I were coaching you, I would not allow you to go to green belt level if you don't have 3 months worth of reserves in your bank account. So that's on mindset. And then in terms of habits, I've already spoken about having a generous spirit, but also a habit of saving money. If you were to talk to a financial planner, they will tell you that on a monthly basis, you need to save 10 to 15% of your income, right? That's where we would want to get to. Now, let's just define what saving is, because that's very, very important. Many people have got a wrong concept of what saving is. So sometimes, occasionally, you will hear somebody saying, I went to Checkers, and then I saw that bread was costing 10 rands. Then I said, this bread is expensive. Let me go to Pick and Pay. Then the same loaf of bread was costing 8 rands. Therefore, I saved 2 rands. Then I asked them, where is the 2 rands? If you can't show me the 2 rands, and if you haven't saved it in a savings account, you haven't saved anything. Because what typically happens is that people make savings on certain purchases, but then they overspend on other things. And therefore, you haven't really saved. Savings, it's not saved until it's in a savings account. Right, that's just simple. So let me just take my time to work on your budgeting skills. On a monthly basis, you must prepare a budget. I've already told you the 3 reasons why we prepare a budget. A budget is an allocation statement. A budget is a cost management statement, but also a budget is a tool that we use for performance management. So at yellow belt skills, at yellow belt level, we would want you to, before you spend, always have a budget. Make it a habit to do that. If it's not budgeted for, you can't spend any money on it. Make it a habit, to do that. Another habit that you must make is that before you get your next salary, you must do a comparison of what you have spent vis-a-vis what you budgeted for. So on the income side, you're going to budget for your salary. So if you can see what is on the slides, you'll see, let's just assume that somebody who earns 100 rands, they put that on the income line, and then 10% is not yours. So you deduct it from 100% as a matter of habit. Trust me, I don't have time to elaborate on this, but people that understand that part of what they have is a seed. Ask our ancestors, whenever they harvested grain, for example, from the field, they did not consume all of it. Part of it was used as a seed to plant the next time. So I would want you to think of the 10% as a seed that you need to plant so that you can be perpetually prosperous. The other thing that I would want you to do as soon as you receive your salary is to transfer the 10% into initially an emergency account and then over time into an investment account. Many people get confused. What is savings and what is investment? Savings simply means keeping money for a rainy day, in simple language, so that if you run out of money, you are broke, you can actually use your savings. That's what savings are there for. Investment, on the other hand, is when you invest in an asset. That asset could be a tangible asset, it could be a financial asset, it could be an intangible asset, in such a way that you're trying to beat inflation. Because from a personal financial management point of view, inflation is one of your enemies. So the objective of saving, of investment, is to be able to generate returns out of your assets so that you can become wealthy and beat inflation. By the way, at yellow belt level, there are certain numbers that I would want you to be comfortable with. The first number that I would want you to be comfortable is the number called inflation. It doesn't matter whether you're a scientist, you're a mechanic, or whoever you are, you need to understand that inflation is an enemy. In fact, most poor people don't understand that their enemy is inflation, because the rich always have got tools to protect themselves against inflation. So at this level, just understand that if there is inflation simply refers to the general increase in prices, and that is your enemy as far as personal financial management is concerned. So if you look at our budget that I have on the screen, the person earns 100 rands. On the income side, they have subtracted the 20 rands, they remain with 80. So when they spend, their spending cannot exceed 80 rands. We refer to that as living below your means. The person earns 100 rands, but they make sure that their spending does not exceed 80 rands, right? So don't tell yourself I earn 100 rands, therefore all my expenses have to come to 80 rands. You're not going to make financial progress. On the expense side, our budget is structured in such a way that we address the lower needs first. Some of you might have gone to, to study psychology, and you might have met a guy called Maslow. He proposed what is called a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So what Maslow basically said is that as we go throughout life's journey, we first address our lower level needs first. And our lower level needs are physiological, sorry. Physiological needs basically are accommodation, food, transport. Those are the basic needs. So say, for example, you're starting to work today, you would want to work on your lower level needs first, and you budget for them. As you make financial progress, probably you'll budget towards the higher level needs, such as self-actualizing yourself. So as you allocate that 80 rands, you allocate that 80 rands towards the lower level needs. And as you make financial progress, you begin to address other needs. For example, entertainment and going on holiday is not a lower level need. And therefore, if you're working for the first time, you would want to address those lower level needs first. I sometimes get, very worried with somebody who is starting to work, and, you see them buying a very expensive car, for example, and they don't even have a house. They don't even have got plans to get accommodation and such assets. It means that you do not have your priorities in order, or you would want to go on holiday before you sort your lower level needs, first. So in this illustrative budget that we have, which has been drafted using Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this budget has been drafted on the assumption that we are talking about somebody who has gotten a job, they are at yellow belt level, and therefore they address their lower level needs first. So in this budget, we've got 80 rands to budget. The total expenses come to 76 rands, and therefore they've got a budget surplus of 4 rands. Every time you budget as an individual, you must always budget for a budget surplus. That surplus is available to absorb any over expenditures you might have in that particular month. Look, at the end of the day, countries, because they print money, they are allowed as part of their budgeting to budget for a deficit. For example, every time the Minister of Finance in South Africa presents a budget, you'll actually see that their total expenses exceed the country's income. That is very acceptable for countries because countries are able to print money. As an individual, you can't print money. Therefore, you cannot operate with a budget surplus. It's just that simple. Companies, on the other hand, because of their ability to borrow, sometimes they can budget for, budgets, they can make losses. But as an individual, you cannot spend more than you earn. It's just that simple. And it's very, very important for you to do that. It's not only about preparing a budget. There are 3 ratios that I would want to introduce to you. Every time you present a budget, you must monitor these 3 ratios because they are very, very important. Number 1, we advise that people calculate a debt to disposable income ratio. All right, for example, of your disposable income, our disposable income in this case is 100 rands. How much is going to debt payments, right? And passive income to total income, in this case, it's a person at yellow belt skills, and therefore they haven't generated passive income. Passive income is income that comes on a monthly basis, and then your reserves cover, right? For those of you who are interested, I will give you an Excel spreadsheet of this budget so that you can begin to budget. But on a monthly basis, monitor those ratios for yourselves because they are very, very important for you to monitor. So let me move on. I've now addressed budgeting skills. I've highlighted that at yellow belt skills, get into the habit of preparing a budget. When we prepare a budget on a cash flow basis. For some of you who've got accounting skills, you'll know that sometimes accountants use the accruals concept to prepare budgets. This budget is a simple budget. This is what I get. This is what I'm going to spend. And it's based on cash flows. And it's just that simple. But those 3 ratios that I have presented there are very, very important because these are ratios that we are going to monitor as we go on our financial journey, all right? Particularly the passive income to total income ratio, because you will not get to black belt level. At black belt level, you must have generated passive income to meet your cost base. So for this individual, you will actually see that their total expenses are 76 rands. They earn 100 rands. So their total expenses are 76 rands. For you to get to black belt level, you must generate passive income of at least 76 rands. So passive income is income that comes while you are asleep. You'll actually find that there are certain people who do not have the ability to generate passive income over their lifetime. Some of you might have jobs. For what we are doing today, salary is a low quality income stream, right? So as we go throughout the belt levels, we need to build a number of streams of income that are of a higher quality. For example, dividend income is income of a higher quality compared to salaries. Right, let's move on to debt management skills, to balance sheet management skills. So at yellow belt level, you must be able to do your balance sheet. Your balance sheet is, these are my total assets, these are my total liabilities. And for each of those assets and liabilities, you just indicate what is the effective yield on assets and what is the effective cost of my liabilities. What we are aiming to do is to help you acquire assets that generate income instead of just generating assets for the purposes of assets. Because in your personal financial management journey, you need to get income producing assets, because income producing assets are what you are going to use to generate passive income. Now, let me now move on to talk about debt freedom. In all likelihood, when you join me on this journey to black belt status, you're probably swimming in debt. You've got lots of debt, you can't generate any income. Don't worry, we will coach you to get out of debt. When I started my own personal financial management journey, it was after I had started a business and that business had collapsed. I was 2 million in debt, 2.5 million to be exact, in debt. And I wasn't going anywhere in terms of making financial progress on that debt. And then I realized that I needed a plan to get out of debt. So at yellow belt level, you need a concrete plan to get out of debt. Some of you might be starting to work for the very first time. My advice to you is that don't get into this frenzy of getting debt that you might not be able to pay. So I've got a 4-step plan to get out of debt. Number one, start compiling all your debts. Think about, who do you owe money? It could be a bank, it could be individuals, right? Who do you owe money? Some people do not even do this computation, this listing, and therefore you'll actually see that you only pay debts when people remind you that they owe you money, right? So that's the first step. You need to determine how much the hole is, right? Because going into debt is like digging a hole. So you need to know how much are you in the red. And in the first step, not only should you know how much you are in the hole, but you need to start, you need to stop digging further. In other words, you need to make a commitment to yourself that I will not get more debt than is necessary, right? So at that stage, you compile a balance sheet, right? Which is very, very important for you to do. But not only that, you then list all your debts. When I say listing all your debts, in that list, you also list the cost of the debt. One of the things that you will see is that unsecured debt is much more costly than secured debt. Because in our plan, we need to get rid of the debt being guided by the cost of the debt. So more expensive debt, the debt that we owe to individuals, that's what we get rid of first. So that is the first step. The second step would be now to approach all your creditors and to negotiate a realistic repayment plan. Please don't run away from your debtors, from your creditors, sorry. Some people, when they get into debt, they start absconding. They don't talk to people. You might not have the money to pay all your debts, but your creditors will respect you for the fact that you're not running away and that you are approaching them and telling them what the situation is. If ever I've got advice for you, the advice would be, instead of your creditors running, and chasing you, you should actually be chasing your creditors, right? And not being afraid. So don't be that kind of individual who does not want to take call from your creditors. Take that call. Tell them the truth. At this moment, I'm in a hole. Don't make commitments that you will not be able to fulfill. Some people do not have integrity to such an extent that they will say to their creditors, don't worry, I will pay you by the end of the month. When they know that there is no there is no chance under heaven that they will be able to pay that money. So you need to negotiate a realistic plan with your creditors. The third thing that you need to do is to determine your credit score. In all likelihood, because you have been borrowing from credit providers, there is a record of your credit score, somewhere. One of the things that I did as I was embarking on my debt freedom plan was to register my name with the 3 credit bureaus that we have in South Africa. So the 3 credit bureaus are: number 1, XDX, right? So just Google XDS Splendid. Go to their website and register yourself. The other credit bureau is TransUnion. Again, register yourself on TransUnion. And the other credit bureau is Experian. So I registered myself on all the credit bureau. And when I started the journey, my credit score was very, very low. In fact, it was the worst credit score that you could actually think of. On each of their websites, they will give you ideas of what you can do to improve your credit score. I'm glad to report to you, today that my credit score is close to 1,000. It's the highest that it could be. Because on a monthly basis, I would track what is happening to my credit score. The credit score essentially improves when you meet your commitments to various creditors. Which is why, if you looked carefully at our budget, under safety needs, I had a budget line item there on debt freedom expenses, right? This is the expenses that you have budgeted to meet all your commitments to your creditors. So you are monitoring your credit score. You've got a plan to improve your credit score. Let me just tell you something which is very important. For you to get to black belt status, you need to guard your credit score, because there will be instances in your personal financial freedom journey that you will need to borrow money, right? And so number 4, use your budget to stick to your commitments. And then if you follow that 4-step process, you're not going to get out of debt in 1 year. It took me about 3 years of a disciplined approach to getting out of debt, to pay off my 2.5 million. And I was able to do that and improve my score, over time. And it can be done. So those are the yellow belt skills that I would want you to develop, in terms of hard financial skills, in terms of mindset, and also in terms of habits. At this time, I would want to just go through the chat section and see if there are any questions that I may need to address there. Right, I see that there is a question from Nontlandla, who says, how will a budget of a person drowning in debt, look like when trying to attain debt freedom? Nontlandla, that's a very good question. So before I answer your question, before we go to budgeting, we need to get the mentality right. Don't be that kind of person who is told by your creditors what to do. Be the kind of person that tells creditors what to do. if you've got this mentality that says creditors will tell me what to pay them, you're already in credit. So don't allow creditors to toss you around. Because if you're drowning in debt, your credit score is low. It's low, anyway, right? I can tell you for one of my creditors, in fact, I can be honest with you. Because I was deep in debt, they actually took me to court and I was blacklisted on a credit bureau and somewhere. And what I said to myself is, if you have listed me on a credit bureau, I will pay you last. And that credit, I paid them last. Because what have I got to lose? If you have already listed me on a credit bureau, because in terms of South African law, your name can be blacklisted on a credit bureau for a maximum of 5 years in any event. So that kind of creditor who has listed me on a credit bureau, I'm going to pay them last, right? So what you do is that you pay yourself first, right? So don't be in a hurry to pay your creditors. Have this idea that basically says, I will pay my creditors the way I'm generating income, right? So how will the budget of somebody drowning in debt, look like? You look at your income that you have, right? You separate money for the physiological needs, accommodation, the basic needs. You budget for those safety needs because you still need to eat. Whatever remains out of that is the money that is available for creditors. Whatever is available to pay for creditors, you prioritize. So out of that priority list, I would pay individuals first. I would pay the more expensive debt, first. And then the debt that I owe to financial institutions, I will pay last, right? So that's how the budget would look like. So if you are drowning in debt, you still need to do a budget anyway. But you need to have the presence of mind not to be harassed by your creditors. If a creditor has blacklisted me and they are a financial institution, they've done the worst that can be done, right? So I just tell them that in this month, I don't have money to pay you. But at the stage when I'll be able to generate money, I will pay you. I don't know if there is another question.
Okay, there was another question where we asked, how does an ordinary person calculate their net worth? I'm sure it's easier for Patrice Motsepe to calculate his net worth, but if you're just an ordinary person, how do you calculate your net worth?
That's actually a great question, Tafazo. So let's just be very clear. Net worth is calculated based on productive assets. When they calculate Patrice Motsepe's net worth, they don't consider the value of, Patrice's clothes, Patrice's shoes. They consider his productive assets, all right? So sometimes we've got this bad habit of accumulating assets that do not, produce any income. In your net worth, you are basically looking at significant assets like a car, like a house, those productive assets. We're not including in net worth your clothes and probably office furniture. So start with those big assets. I would start with office furniture, jewelry, because jewelry is something that can be sold. The rule of thumb is that if you cannot pawn, think of pawn shops. Some of you have gone to pawn shop. If you can take your asset to a pawn shop and they won't accept it, then that asset should not be included in your statement of net worth, right? It's just that simple, because you are talking about assets that can be sold and that have got a productive, that can be used productively. So all you need to do is that you estimate the value of your assets. The value of your debt is something that you can determine So just go to your pawn shop. Pawn shops are very good because they know the value of assets. If you ask them, if I were to sell you, my fridge, what would you give me? That would be the value of your assets. It's just that simple. So you then accumulate the value of your assets, and then you subtract all the value of your liabilities, and then you get to your net worth. I wouldn't advise you to be tracking your net worth on a monthly basis. So we are budgeting on a monthly basis. Probably calculating net worth is something that you do on a quarterly basis or on a half-yearly basis, so that you may see the progress that you are making. So that's how I would do it. I don't know if there is any other question. So before we call it a day, at least for today. Right, I don't see any other question. Thank you so much for joining us today for this presentation. We were focusing on yellow belt skills. In the next installment of the presentation, I would want to focus on orange belt. The idea here is that over time, you need to be developing in your financial management skills. It's a competence framework that is there. Don't be haphazard in terms of your personal management, financial management, journey. One of the questions that I normally get from people is, Themba, are you available to coach me? No, I'm not available. If you are at white belt level, yellow belt level, orange belt level, just be part of this free group coaching sessions that we have. Because in any event at that level, you probably cannot afford the coaching fees. So you'd want to use all the money that you have to pay debt, to get into a position where you'll be in control of your financing. If you get to green belt level, brown belt level, then I'm able to coach people on a one-to-one basis, because those kind of people, at least in terms of mindset, in terms of financial skills, they've actually gotten something. Because you are following us on Facebook, next month we are going to go to launch our website, and we'll have a free tool on our website. So just be on the web, on the lookout, for Chaffee's presentations. In a month's time, we will give you a link on this Facebook page. If you click on that link, you will go onto our website, www.blackbeltfinancial.personalfinancialmanagement.com, and there will be a free tool there. You will respond to certain questions, and then you will be able to see, as long as you respond to those questions honestly, you'll be able to see what belt level you are. So are you white? Are you yellow? Are you green? Are you brown? And then what is the skills that you need to improve to get to the next level. Because we are aiming to be black belts in the way that we manage our financing. Let me now hand over to Tafadzwa, and then Tafadzwa will conclude the broadcast.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I hope we're encouraged to. Okay, there's another question before we conclude.
So, sorry, guys. I just see that there is a question from Tendai Elliot Sigauke, who says, do you have any recourse if you get credit which you don't qualify for? Yes, you do have recourse. If you are in South Africa, all credit, as long as it has been given by a credit provider registered with the credit regulator, it has to be done in terms of the National Credit Act. So what you can essentially do there is to go to the credit regulator and say, I don't believe that I should have gotten this credit agreement to begin with. And if it can be proven that the credit should not have been given in the first instance, that credit agreement is null and void. So that is the law. In fact, Tendai, you have asked a very, very good question. When you are getting out of debt, you need to be very aggressive. You need to use every legal loophole that you can think of to get out of debt. And to the extent to which you are given credit that you do not qualify for, pursue the matter with the credit regulator if you are in South Africa, and see if that credit can be nullified. One thing that I did not mention to you, which I might as well mention, I had significant amounts of credit with a financial institution. And that credit was amounting, of the 2.5 million, it was amounting to 250,000. And that amount was given in 3 loans. So what I did I phoned this particular financial institution, whose name I will not mention, and I said to them, look, I'm struggling here. If I were to give you 30% of what I owe you, would that be good? They resisted. They said, Themba, we will give you a discount on your loan, but we would want the discount to be 50%. I was very aggressive. I said, look, I've got the cash now. I can give you 30%. And guess what? It was approved. For the 3 loans that I had with this financial institution, I paid 30%. And I said to them, look, once I pay you this 30%, I need a loan settlement letter. And look, they were able to do that. So we need to have this aggressive attitude of negotiating with credit providers, but not only that, even of exercising our legal rights, whether it is with the credit regulator or with anybody, so that we can get out of debt, because that's where we would want to go at the end of the day. So don't be shy about it, right? And I think those are all the questions that we have here. Thank you so much for today's lessons. We have overrun. Over to you, Kafan.
Thank you again for joining us, and we just want to acknowledge for non-Tlatla, Tendai for joining us, and I'm just mentioning the people whose names, Shidonda Zungira, Non-Tutu. Thank you guys for joining the live, and if I have not mentioned it because I haven't seen your name in the comment section, if you may be concerned that your net worth is negative or is at 0 and you can't calculate, I'm sure Patrice Motsepe started somewhere. We can also start where we are. Thank you very much. Looking forward to for you to joining us on our next live. Enjoy your weekend. Cheers.